In a book these days, what you're really trying to do is sell an idea. You're trying to get people to think differently about a topic, interrupt their way of thinking, educate them about something they may not know about, and inspire them to get in touch with you, inspire them to take some action. So those are the kinds of books that really build businesses.
You're listening to episode 142 of the Fitness Business Podcast. We'd like to thank this month's premier podcast partner, MyZone, the wearable technology that enhances paid programming and drives customer engagement. Hi everyone, I am incredibly excited to share this week's show with you all. My special guest this week is Daniel Priestley. Daniel is a successful entrepreneur who has built and sold businesses in Australia, Singapore, and in the UK. He's the co-founder of Dent Global, one of the world's top business accelerators for entrepreneurs and leaders to stand out and to scale up. He's the author of the best-selling books Key Person of Influence, Entrepreneur Revolution, Oversubscribed, and 24 Assets. And he's been named as one of the top 25 entrepreneurs in London influencing the business scene. I first read KPI earlier in 2017, and I immediately wanted to interview Daniel for the show because I feel as though there is so much in this book that will resonate with many of you. In the interview, Daniel actually walks us through the steps to becoming a key person of influence. We talk about the topic of microniches, which he covers in the book, and we also talk about how to get started publishing your first book. Now, before we transition into this week's show, I do want to give a shout out to one of our podcast partners. MyZone is a wearable technology platform that leverages personal goal setting, gamification, and social platforms to motivate your members. You can learn more at myzone.org. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm really thrilled.
What was it that actually motivated you to write Key Person of Influence and to develop the KPI program?
During my 20s, I launched and grew several businesses, and they grew very, very rapidly from an idea in my early 20s to a multi-million-dollar business, a global business by the end of my 20s. So I built a very reasonably successful and fast growth business. And one of the strategies that we had employed through that whole 10-year growth period was that I always got myself under the wing of someone who was already very well known, liked, and trusted. So I would have people on the board or who were advisors to the company, who were authors and who were industry spokespeople. I would employ speakers to come to our conferences, and we had celebrity speakers, and we had people who had built very, very large and successful companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, came and spoke at our events. And because I was getting myself so closely aligned to these people, I really started to see that they were very similar in the way that they approach business. And I noticed just these similarities coming up again and again, the way that they would pitch ideas, the way that they would create products, the way that they were, very protective of their brand and their reputation. And I developed this term by the end of my 20s called a key person of influence, which is this kind of person who's in the middle of the industry, who all the opportunities go through them. When someone says, oh, we need to, we've got an idea in this particular industry, they go, oh, well, we need to talk to that person because they're the key person of influence in the industry. So I saw this as a phenomenon. And I also really felt like I wanted to position myself as a key person of influence as well. I felt like, it was time for me to play a bigger game. And, I'd been very much kind of behind the scenes or, I was a CEO and director, but I wasn't publicly facing as much as I thought I could benefit by doing that. So I wanted to position myself as a key person of influence. And I began writing down all my notes that I had learnt from these types of people. And it actually formulated into the 5-step formula that was in the book.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go through those 5 steps shortly. One of the things that for me really made a huge impact was the chapter where you talked about micro niches. And in the book, you say, in every industry, there will be micro niches within niches. And for me, that was a real light bulb moment And I think it's something that is very, very relevant for our audience. Can you explain to us what a micro niche is and perhaps share some examples of what you mean?
Yeah, so a micro niche is where you really focus in on a very particular specialty, and you might narrow down by a particular age group, a particular gender, a particular problem that you see in the marketplace that needs solving. So for example, you might have a micro niche training female marathon runners who are over 40, and that could actually be a micro niche. Or you might focus on fitness training for moms who have had a cesarean birth, and that could be a micro niche. Or you could focus on training male executives who travel all the time, gold frequent flyers on at least 2 airlines, and have to win business over lunches and dinners and drinks. And by focusing on these really specific people and these specific challenges, it makes you immediately stand out. Now, this goes contrary to what most people think, because they think, well, actually the safer strategy would be to be very general and to train anyone and everyone who comes along. And that probably was true back before the internet. Before the internet, you wanted to be a general store because, you wanted to capture as many people in the local 5-mile radius as possible. But in the age of the internet, people can find you from anywhere in the world. They can get excited about what you do from anywhere in the world. You can probably deliver value to people anywhere in the world. And also you need the ability to cut through the noise. You have to, if you're too general, then you're just part of the noise and you're not actually standing out from the crowd. So one of the things I encourage people to do, especially as a place to start, is to go into a nice micro niche that they can become known for, become famous for, and then broaden out from there. So there are some famous examples. Even before the internet, there's a motivational speaker that everyone's familiar with called Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. And Tony Robbins actually began with quit smoking and then fear of phobias and overeating. And he would go around talking about phobias and quitting smoking and eating more healthy. And he broadened that niche and broadened that niche and broadened that niche until he became all about personal empowerment. He released the series called Personal Power, which was a very general program, but he had actually built his entire reputation, his brand up from starting with some very, very micro niche problems that he solved. So a micro niche can be a place to start. Maybe you broaden it as you grow, but it's certainly really powerful for cutting through the noise.
I think that's a really great example that you talked about, saying how much more accessible it is to do this nowadays with the internet. And we had Michael Stelzner on the show recently, and he talked to us about Facebook Watch, which of course is the platform where you can start to develop a series and get your message out there. And to me, I think that matches perfectly with the concept of a micro niche, because it's a really great way that you can actually show people just how specialized you are in a particular area and gain a following from all over the world, which I love the idea of. So thank you for explaining the concept of a micro niche. Now let's get into the real kind of grit of KPI. Can you talk us through those 5 things that you need to have in place in order to be a KPI?
Yeah, so the 5 Ps in order are the ability to deliver a perfect pitch. So when somebody asks you the question, what do? You've got a really compelling response to that. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to publish content. So whether it be a book, whether it be blogs, articles, or podcasts, but publishing content, getting your ideas into a digital scalable format that people can discover you on those platforms. The third P is the ability to monetize through a product ecosystem. So you have to not just have one particular product or service, but you actually have to have several products and services that become your signature product and service ecosystem. The fourth P is called your profile, and that is how you're seen from a distance. It's your awards and accolades. It's your social media profiles. It's your traditional media profiles. And then the fifth P is the people that you partner with. So the ability to bring together the right partners, perhaps partnering with bigger brands, more successful or more well-known brands, so that you can actually partner with them and lift yourself up as well. And when I was traveling with all of these kind of celebrity speakers and these multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire entrepreneurs, what I noticed is that this is almost all they focus on. They just focus on these 5 Ps. So they're pitching all the time. They're publishing content and publishing articles and creating products. If we think of someone like, for example, Richard Branson, the iconic billionaire entrepreneur, he doesn't actually do much other than these 5 Ps. So he's pitching ideas and he's pitching the Virgin business. He's publishing books, publishing articles, publishing content. He's choosing which products the Virgin brand goes on. He's raising his profile and the profile of Virgin, and he's doing partnerships. Almost all of the companies in the Virgin Group are in partnership with companies that know how to run those businesses. So pretty much that's all Richard Branson does. He's not functional in any of the businesses. He doesn't fly any planes or, do any credit card deals or, open any, run any of the gyms. He's not functional in any capacity. He just does these 5 skills.
Daniel, you mentioned it in your PreCall Quickfire 5, and then you touched on it again then, and that is the idea of actually publishing a book. So we talk about publishing content online, and I think everyone, has a fairly good handle on that. But I think that there are a lot of people out there that love the idea of publishing their own book, but it's a pretty kind of big task, or it feels like a big task. For anyone that has that on their wish list of things to do, is there any advice that you could give us around that on publishing your first book?
Yeah, so a book tends to be 40,000 words, and what you're looking to do is to educate and inspire people to come and do business with you. So you're not trying to create a textbook. You're not trying to create some sort of massive, thick doorstop that tells everyone and everything, everyone every single thing about what they need to do. You're in a book these days, what you're really trying to do is sell an idea. You're trying to get people to think differently about a topic, interrupt their way of thinking, educate them about something they may not know about, and inspire them to get in touch with you, inspire them to take some action. So those are the kinds of books that really build businesses. They're typically about 40,000 words, and typically they're full of stories that you would already tell if you were asked to speak at your industry conference or if you were asked to give a sales presentation. These are the types of stories you would already be out there, sharing. And they're probably even stories that you have shared in emails and blogs and those kind of things in the last couple of months. And one of the things that I always recommend is to work alongside a team who do this all the time. So there is now this industry called hybrid publishing, and I'm affiliated with a company called Rethink Press in the UK, although we do books all over the world. And Rethink Press have a team of people who their full-time job is just coordinating people's books to come out, whether it be the writing, editing, or production process. And in the same way that someone who's never gotten themselves into a great fitness condition, they've never been super fit, they benefit enormously through being part of a group or having a personal trainer. It's very similar to writing a book. The difference with a book, though, is once that book is out, it's a permanent asset. You can lose your fitness if you don't keep it up. But once that book is out, it's permanent. It's out there, and you will always be an author from that moment on.
And Daniel, you talked earlier about the product ecosystem, and that book would make a part of that product ecosystem. Do you generally see a book, when you're a KPI, as a revenue line in the business, or do you use it more as a way of actually promoting other things that you do within the business as kind of a lead generator?
So, I used to employ business development managers, and the typical business development manager role, you would expect to pay about $60,000 as an entry-level business development manager. And you would also pay travel, you'd pay, computer, all of those kind of things. And realistically, you're probably going to, be looking at $75,000 in order to have somebody in that role, even in a fairly junior capacity. And when I look at a book, I simply just compare it to that business development manager role. This is a tool that goes out and communicates the message perfectly every time. It has an impact for every person you send it to. It's very cheap for the book to travel. It never calls in sick. I mean, one of the things, a business development manager can only really work about 1,500 hours per year. That's if they're really good and they're always on. So if you were to just print up 1,500 books and send them to everyone in your industry or everyone who was a potential client, I guarantee you that for 1/10 of the cost of a business development manager, that those 1,500 books are going to go out there and actually do 10 times the job. But I will say this, the absolutely shocking thing that happened to me is that I started getting royalty checks, and that blew my mind. So I never wrote any of my books. I've written 4 best-selling books. I never wrote any of them to be anything more than tools to go out and share a message and to kind of talk about the good work that we were doing. And I never thought of them as money makers. And then suddenly, every 6 months, I start getting these royalty checks. And the royalty checks have started to become quite substantial. And it's like, I sort of originally thought, oh, well, if it's a bit of champagne money, fine, that'll be nice. But actually it's quite ridiculous how actually some of these royalty checks can actually add up really, really quickly, because Amazon has cut out a lot of the costs, so authors can now earn about $2 per book pretty easily. So if you sell 10,000 books, it adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing to talk about, because I think that quite often the fantasy is that you're writing a book and selling a book to make some money out of it. But I think, and as you've just shared with us, perhaps that might come later on down the track. But I think mindset-wise, for a number of our listeners, it is really, as you say, about going out there and sharing your message, using that publication as a way to reach more customers, to talk about, that specialty micro niche that you work within, and perhaps approaching it with that mindset is a more, sensible way to start.
It's also a positioning tool. It positions you as someone who cares enough about what you're talking about to write a book. So even if nobody read the book, the fact that you've written it says a lot about who you are and how much you care about the industry. So it's a very good positioning tool. It immediately gets you into the media. It immediately gets you on radio and TV and all that sort of stuff, or it gives you about 3 times more likely chance that you'll get accepted on those kind of platforms. But the funny thing is the more books I gave away, the more I sold.
And you get to write author on your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, I get to write 4 times author.
That's right. Of 4 best-selling books, furthermore.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. Okay, Daniel, one last question for you. Can you leave us with your top 3 tips for fitness professionals that want to become a key person of influence? Before we hear those last takeaways from Daniel, here's a message from one of our podcast partners. Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Microniches Functional Training by PreCall, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precore.com/fitness business podcast. Now let's go back to Daniel with his top tips for fitness professionals who want to become a key person of influence.
Yeah, so the top 3 tips that I have for fitness professionals in particular is that it's really important within the noise of the fitness industry that you really tune into the person who is suffering a problem, or really got to tune into your customer and put yourself in the customer's shoes. One of the best things that a great entrepreneur can do is empathize really fully with their client. So the fitness professionals that we've worked with in particular, one of the things that really built their business is they started by going out and asking lots of questions of the perfect type of customer, really understanding why they struggle with their fitness, what their fitness is worth to them, and kind of really getting under the hood of how to create a real transformation for the person. The second thing that transformed into is a high value offering. So one of the things we've done with our fitness professionals that we've worked with in Key Person of Influence is we've really encouraged them to go high end rather than trying to have $39 classes or, trying to sell online videos for a few dollars here and a few things there. One of the things that we've really discovered is that for a lot of fitness professionals, having a small group of elite clients actually makes a lot more money than a vast number of low-paying clients. So, for example, one fitness trainer that we worked with here in London, we quadrupled his income by cutting his client list by 2/3. And what we did is we made sure that he offered a full and remarkable concierge-level service to some elite CEOs. And he basically did nutrition, fitness, over Skype, when they travel, looking at the menus that they're going to be eating from, looking at what's going to be served to them on the plane, and actually, helping them pre-order special meals on the plane, really focusing on, when they're in Hong Kong, getting on Skype in the middle of the night and actually doing that workout with them on, in the hotel gym, and offering that really premium level service. Anyway, this particular fitness industry client that we worked with did cut the list back to a third of the clients, and his income went through the roof, working a lot less hours by focusing on a really high value offering that really solves a problem. And then the other thing too is, the final thought is that in the fitness industry, you've constantly got the potential for creating beautiful digital assets, and it's important to capture them. So there are certain stories that you tell your client one-on-one that really inspire that client. It's worth recording that and putting it out there, perhaps on a video or on a podcast. There are images, before and after shots, that would really inspire a lot of people. Make sure you capture those at permission and start to share them. And, don't just share them on the classic Instagram where everyone's beautiful. Go and share some of these things on LinkedIn where everyone's suffering from not having enough fitness, but they've got plenty of money and they need a breakthrough. But capture those digital assets, share those digital assets across a multiple of platforms. Go outside of the normal platforms that every fitness trainer is utilizing, and you'll actually find that there's a lot of people, more than ever, who want to pay a high value for a really good service to transform their fitness.
Daniel, they are great tips to finish off on today. So thank you so much for that. Now, we briefly mentioned your other books today, which of course are Entrepreneur Revolution, Oversubscribed, and 24 Assets. Now, if people want to read any of your 4 best-selling books, or if they want to find out more about the KPI program, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so my books are all on Amazon under Daniel Priestley. They can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Daniel Priestley. And one thing that is a really useful tool is, for a smaller business that's perhaps under $500,000, the influence scorecard is a really powerful 10-minute questionnaire that allows you to tune into, are you being a great influence or not? And that's keypersonofinfluence.com/scorecard. And then if you've hit about $500,000 in revenue and you're now looking to grow and scale and widen the margins of your business, we have something called the 24 Assets Heat Map, which looks at some of the assets that you could perhaps start to look at making those assets digital, some of the areas of the business that could be automated, or you could put some media in there. And that's called 24assets.com. So you can visit keypersonofinfluence.com and find the scorecard, or you can go to 24assets.com and hit the heat map. And both of those tools, would be really right to help you to grow. And they're just, really good data-rich reports that you get, sharing with you specifically how you can grow those areas of the business.
Daniel, once again, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been able to chat to you. I want to thank you personally for, as I said at the very beginning, the influence that you have had on my own personal career. And I'm very grateful that you've come on the show today to share all of your experience with the listeners of the Fitness Business Podcast. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chantal.
Get ready for this week's bonus segment, your extra injection of information, education, and inspiration to strengthen your fitness business.
This week, I caught up with Emmett Williams from MyZone for an update on the latest news from MyZone and what's coming up in 2018. Emmett, it is great to have you back on the show.
Hey, it's great to be back, Chantal. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, we are already at the end of 2017. I can't quite believe it. And I know that it's been a huge year for MyZone. And I believe that you recently had a study done by Blair McCaney from MXM, who delivered the Medallia survey for the fitness industry. So do you want to tell us some of those key findings?
Yeah, absolutely. Blair's in a unique position in that he runs a lot of these surveys across the fitness industry. And so he was able to mine into the data. And what he did was he selected a sample of 24 health clubs within his database that all had MyZone installed. Then he took a sample size of 1,000 members and he compared the Net Promoter Score of non-MyZone users to MyZone users. And for those that are familiar with Net Promoter Score, a small movement of 2 or 3 points is considered really significant, particularly when you're, in the positive numbers. And what Blair found, and he's just released it in the last month, and we're putting an infographic together and a report together at the moment. What he found at these 24 clubs was that non-MyZone users had a net promoter score of positive 37, and MyZone users had a net promoter score of positive 48, which is a delta of 11 points. And as I said just before, 2 or 3 points is really significant. 11 points is sensational.
That is amazing results, Emmett. Was there anything else in the findings that Blair discovered?
Yeah, he also found that of those surveyed, the likelihood to continue was much higher as well. It was 8.8 versus 8.3, and that might not sound like a lot, but once you get above 7.5, to get that delta is significant. And the other one was around satisfaction with fitness results. Again, the MyZone users had an 8.0 and the non-MyZone users had a 7.6. Again, once you get above 7.5, it's really hard to move the needle. So, whichever statistic Blair looked at, they were all really positive, pointing in the right direction for the population, showing that there's a correlation between MyZone users and the metrics that you're looking for as an operator.
Emmett, if people want to read more about the study, and you mentioned that you're putting together a bit of a summary page, an infographic at the moment, where can they get hold of that information?
Yeah, look, it'll be going out on our social pages in the next week. That said, if you just email sales@myzone.org, the guys will send it to you directly.
That is perfect, and we'll make sure we include that link in today's show notes. So while I've got you on the line, Emmett, I wanted to just say thank you so much to yourself and all of the team at MyZone for supporting the Fitness Business Podcast throughout 2017. I think I mentioned earlier that it's been a big year for MyZone. It's also been an exceptionally big year for the podcast. So we are so grateful for your support. We are very, very excited for things to come in 2018 because it is shaping up to be a very big year ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look forward to supporting in 2018.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Emmett, and giving us an update on MyZone and on those survey results.
Thanks, Chantel.
During the chat with Emmett, he mentioned Blair McCaney. And as it happens, Blair is actually our special guest on next week's show. So make sure that you listen out for the PreCall Quick 5 that's coming up in just a minute to hear what he's going to be talking about next week. Now, before we go to that PreCall Quick 5, I have 2 other news updates for you. But first, let's hear from Tribe Team Training. Are you interested in increasing your center's income and your trainer's income from small group training? Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and paying extra. Click the Tribe Team Training link in the show notes or go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast for your free formula to see how much income you can make from small group training. I'm excited to tell you all about the Fitness Business Podcast Santa Sack because it is now open. The online virtual Santa Sack is chock full of discounts on products and services and offers from our wonderful podcast partners and suppliers from the fitness industry all across the world. You can go over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/Santa Sack to see all of the great offers that are available. We're adding to it every single week, so make sure that you check it out. One more time, that is fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/Santa Sack. Another huge piece of news is that our next FBP family meetup will be at IRSA 2018 in San Diego. You are all invited to join us on Wednesday, March 21st at 5:50 a.m. at the main entrance of the Marriott Marquis San Diego Marina. We are going to walk and chat and meet each other and return back to the Marriott at 6:50 a.m. To register for the event, and it is completely free of charge, just go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and up the top of the homepage, you'll see a link to the IRSA FBP Family Meetup. I promise you, you can't miss it. Top of the homepage at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com.
PreCall Quickfire 5.
This week's PreCall Quickfire 5 guest is Blair McCaney. I met with Blair during Club Industry earlier this year. If you want to check out the video of our PreCall Quickfire 5, then head over to our Facebook page at Fitness Business Podcast and you can take a look. Hey everyone, Chantal back again for FBP Live, and I'm joined now with Blair McCaney. Blair, welcome.
Hi, Chantal.
Very excited to have you on. So I've taken you away from club industry for about the next 30 minutes or so, and you are here presenting. So tell us a little bit about your session.
My session Friday morning is on how do you develop a culture that has a habit of innovating. So, and that's one of the things that people overlook when they're trying to innovate is that you have to have a culture that can actually execute it.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I look forward to coming along to your presentation on Friday morning. And for now, we're going to do your pre-core quick fire 5 questions. So let's start off. How about you share with everyone, why do you do what you do?
I am completely obsessed and fascinated with how companies make money through sheer loyalty from their customers. A lot of ways to make money, but when companies really understand loyalty, those companies that thrive, that's what I'm fascinated with.
And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Never stop learning. Learn continuously.
I think that's my favorite piece of advice too.
Yeah.
And what's a personal habit that helps you become better at what you do?
2 things. I exercise every single day, and I am always reading a book. Always.
They're great habits. Yeah. Great habits. And I'm jealous because you're about to go and work out. I'm in my workout gear today. So exactly. You're lucky. Now, what's one book that you'd recommend and why?
So right now I'd recommend Primed to Perform by Neil Doshi and Lindsay McGregor. And because they teach you, one, how to measure in your culture how ready it is for innovation, but it's all about high-performing cultures. And what are the motivations that create high-performing cultures? And in order to get excellent at customer experience, you have to have the kind of culture that they're driving for and what they're showing you in Primed to Perform.
I love your passion around customer experience. Just goes all the way through everything you do.
It does.
It really does.
That's what and so I get to live in the cross-up of customer experience and fitness, which are my 2 passions.
Perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about what you're going to be speaking to us about in the main interview.
About why innovation is so important in any business, reframing innovation a bit, and understanding how that is such a big deal in fitness because, frankly, there's a lot of lack of innovation in fitness.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I look forward to that. So thank you so much for joining us for the Pre-Call Quick Fire 5.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for the Fitness Business Podcast. Before we finish off today, a quick reminder that all of the resources, links, and transcript for today's show can, of course, be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. A big thank you to all of our partners for their support and to our foundation partner, Active Management. Go to www.fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active for a free business development ebook. That is all for this week's show. I will see you next week. And remember, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.